Hello and welcome back to the Conversation Cabinet. Today, we're very fortunate to be joined by Emma and Alistair from the Battle of Ideas. How are you guys doing today?
We're fine. A bit in the thick of
I can
things
imagine.
today because we've got print deadlines for the festival, but we're just about holding together.
Must be manic.
How's that going?
You could say that, yes, it is, to be honest. It's 400 speakers that we've just sorted, and we're making arrangements for over 3,000 people to come to the Battle of Ideas Festival weekend. So lots to
That's
organise,
fantastic.
but very exciting because we've got about 110 panel debates now, which are, in my opinion, I would say this, but very, very good, I think. And it's going to be an exciting weekend for everyone, hopefully.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, that's incredible. Could you give a little summary to people listening at home who haven't heard of the Battle Ideas but are still interested in politics in general?
Yeah, of course. Well, this is the 20th anniversary, actually, of Battle of Ideas. So we go back to 2005. So it's a big year for us as an anniversary. And it was set up because we were a bit disillusioned by the state of public debate. And I emphasize the public in that, actually, very much, because this is not a festival that you come along and you just sit there and listen to talking heads on the stage. But the vast majority of the festival is set up for those that attend to get involved. So we operate a model where we have fairly short talks from all of our panel to start with, but then the floor is open and the discussion goes to and fro between audience and panelists as we attempt to make our way through some very tricky issues. Obviously, we live in 2005 and it's a challenging year to say the least. I mean, it's been a challenging couple of decades in many ways. So there's lots of big political issues, cultural issues, social issues. We do lots of literature and arts. We do science and technology. There's pretty much no issue, actually, that's not up for discussion at Battle of Ideas. And that's why everybody should come along, express their own opinions, try and work out some of the big challenges of the 21st.
How is it that the Battle of Ideas navigates such important issues and delicate ones as well? Because obviously you allow freedom of speech. Could you just tell us a bit about how that's incorporated and how that works?
Well, it's a free speech festival and has been since day one. So 20 years ago, it was a free speech festival, which free speech wasn't such a big challenge in those days, but certainly in the last decade of cancel culture and all the shutdowns of free speech that we're, I suppose, used to hearing about on a daily basis, it's become more challenging over that period. So it's become ever more important that the festival makes something of the fact that it is a space for free speech, that people who think freely and think outside the box and don't deal just in the usual orthodoxies are very, very welcome to the festival. We deal with it because we set the festival up in that way and we make it very clear to everyone that's coming at the expectations, what they'll be coming along and the environment they'll be getting into. And I suppose we challenge them to say, revel in that space and enjoy that freedom to speak, not unthinkingly, not stupidly, not hatefully, but come along nevertheless. And if you have opinions that don't chime with the mainstream, then express them and see if you can defend them. And also be prepared to listen to the opinions that other people express as well. The listening part actually is very, very important at Battle of Ideas because people see free speech as just being able to speak yourself. But actually, to us, it's just as important to be able to listen to opinions, because how else are you going to make up your own mind about what you think on an issue if you can't hear the full range of opinions that exist on it? So that's very important. Come along and listen, and then be prepared to engage with the discussions and make sure that it's people who come contribute to the way that the festival is not an echo chamber of similar opinions, but there to hopefully unpick some tricky problems.
Yeah, it sounds very exciting. What about if someone had ideas of their own, but they weren't necessarily feeling confident enough to express those ideas on the stage or in front of loads of people? What would you say to people like that? Or do you already have a method in place for how people can express themselves like that?
Well, so the main thing about the Battle of Ideas Festival is, as Alistair said earlier, it's a conversation with the public for the public. So we do have panels which have 4 or 5 speakers and chairs, but they only speak for like 5 minutes each. So the main thing about the festival is that we encourage people to take part from the audience, and that's the majority of the discussion. And so it really means that people can have their opinion lit a little bit or a lot, and they can just speak from the floor, and it's not just the people that are on stage that are speaking. I think that means that people can express their own opinion in their own way without kind of having the pressure of just it being them on stage.
Why is this kind of like public engagement with debates so integral and important to you guys at the festival?
Well, the engagement is because people need to engage in order to understand. I mean, you can read a newspaper or you can read lots of books, and we thoroughly recommend that people do those things. But it's only really when you come along and you actually test out some of the things that you think that you really get to find out what it is that you believe about something. Because you can express your opinion and someone will say something different, and then you'll have to think, well, do I agree with that? If I agree with it, then fine. But if I don't agree with it, then I have to think it through in a way that either ends up clarifying what I already think, and therefore you're in a better position to understand why you think it, or someone might come up with a fairly good reason why you shouldn't continue to believe what it is that you thought previously, and you can adjust in different ways. So that is the output of the engagement in the first place. And I think one of the things that many people are concerned these days is that people are a little bit isolated, a little bit atomized. Many people worry that we only get our news from one source. Personally, I think that's maybe a little bit overcooked, actually, because whenever I meet young people, they seem to actually get their news from a variety of different sources. I mean, it's never easier than now to engage with all sorts of different media. So I'm not quite sure that I believe that people are as one-dimensional as is often said. But nevertheless, you come along and you definitely will hear challenging opinions at this festival. And we make no bones about it. And we encourage people in that. Not to be controversial for the sake of being controversial, but as a recognition of the fact that there are many different views in society on particular issues. I mean, we're having debates on things like, I mean, if you take something that your audience might be interested in, should 16-year-olds have the vote? That's quite a controversial issue. I know people on both sides of that debate, both young people and people of my age. So it's the sort of discussion that you need to give an airing, because some people are a little bit cynical, I think. They say, oh, why ever should 16-year-olds ever have the vote? They're not old enough, they can't think, they're not educated enough, and so on and so forth. And perhaps that is the case, but perhaps that might not be the case at a different time. Perhaps it'd be a very good case for giving young people the vote. Personally, where I stand on it just now is probably not. But if I saw 1 million 16-year-olds out in the street all protesting to have the vote, then I would think that's a pretty impressive thing to do. And I would be more minded to change my mind in that instance. So these things don't have they're not black and white debates, and there's not just one answer, which is not to try and relativize this and say anything goes, but it's just to say that there are ways of discussing things that you can arrive at a common conclusion. And I'm not saying that everybody walks out at the end of our festival all believing the same thing, but I certainly think that they'll walk out at the end of it with a much better informed opinion about why it is that they think what they do.
It's really important that people are able to have this freedom of debate and freedom of speech. But I mean, I don't know about you, but recently, it's been in the news a lot that free speech is either under fire or being removed, for instance, like Jimmy Kimmel or stuff like that. Do you think that the Battle of Ideas is now becoming a larger environment for people to be able to share their ideas? Do you think it's almost kind of like a beacon of this freedom of debate?
I think it's definitely shifting. People more generally are becoming more aware of the issue, the kind of difficulties on both sides of free speech. I think so in that instance it is expanding, but I think we're hoping that by bringing people into the festival, that's how they can really see the importance of debate and discussion. But without a festival, they can't see it for themselves, and that's why we're trying to get as many people in to just have a conversation, because there's a limit to how much online, even just promoting it, you can really say we're for free speech, but you don't know how for free speech you are until you experience it for yourselves. And that's what I think at the moment a lot of the issue is, that people aren't actually going out to have these conversations. They aren't actually talking to people all the time in real life, and that's really why we're trying to get the festival going.
I mean, the irony is that I think it's far too often the case that young people are not trusted with a variety of opinions, which to me is outrageous, because it seems to me that the way that young people grow up is to engage with things and try and work it out. So this is not really a festival where it's not a youth festival, for example, where there's lots of things just now where people say, oh, you've got to have this space for the youth, and you've got to give them their own little space. And this is actually not a space for the youth as such. It's a space for the youth to come and mix with other generations as well. And we credit people with being able enough and intelligent enough and interested enough to be able to grapple with difficult ideas. I mean, I'm not saying these are, none of the subjects that we're going to discuss across this festival are necessarily simple. I mean, it doesn't matter whether you're talking about opera or talking about scientific research or talking about the culture wars or the breakdown of politics as seems to be taking place today. There are multiple views on these things, so they're not simple. But they are issues that people can grapple with, I think, and the easier way or the better way to grapple with things is if you're exposed to the widest possible range of opinions on an issue, and that'll help. It'll force you to think it through if you've got anything about you. And I think the people that are attracted to this festival definitely have something about them.
Going back to the kind of philosophy around free speech that's encouraged at the Battle of Ideas, what would you say to those that are offended, and where do you draw that kind of line in debate where people are offended at responses? I mean, how is that considered at all at the Battle of Ideas, or is it kind of say what you like? It might sound silly because it's free, but
I think the whole idea of offence is it's really changing. And the issue of a lot of political discussion is they used to say that the person was political, but now it's almost like the political has become personal. And so I think the Battle of Ideas is about detaching that idea that it's to be offensive at the self and think about the ideas and the concepts and the debates in a much larger conversation. And that's what we're aiming to do. And at the back, obviously, it is free speech, but because it's encouraging an environment around debate and discussion, it's very rare that people are kind of acting explicitly to create offence, because that's not what free speech as a principle is about. It's about expanding the ideas more generally.
Yeah, we've got a section at the festival on civil war. I don't know if you've noticed over, especially in the last year, that quite a lot of people are talking about Western countries, the UK, particularly America, is descending into some sort of modern form of civil war. And you take a look at some of the things that happened even in the past couple of weeks with the situation where Charlie Kirk was murdered and some fairly other horrible incidents. Let's not shy away from the fact that these are terrible, horrific things that are happening. And so we have to work out kind of why it is that society is in this situation just now. Why is it that differences of opinion seem to create such hostility amongst people? Because if you think about the way that, I'm old enough to remember growing up in the 30, 40 years ago when politics was largely left versus right. And those were ideas that could be held slightly apart from yourself. They were political ideas and you discussed them as matters of politics. The thing about so much debate these days seems to be that you're not discussing issues, but you're trying to do down your enemy. And people do see politics as not a matter to be discussed, but a matter to traduce or to undermine those on the opposite side of politics to you. I don't think that's a great position to be in. So I think the thing about the festival is that we try to create a situation where people can come along and discuss ideas, not as something that's personalized and held so close to yourself that you take offense at the very, someone says, I disagree with right-wing politics. And you have to take right-wing conservative ideas for what they are, as ideas, not something that's attacking you personally. So we work quite hard at the festival to create that situation where it is very much a discussion of ideas, Battle of Ideas. It's a bit sort of militarized title of
that's what it says on the tin.
Anyways, I mean, you can tell it was. It's what it says on the tin. I mean, possibly, set up 20 years ago, and who knows? Would you call it Battle of Ideas today? But the thing is, the slogan that goes with the festival, as Emma was saying earlier, is conversations for the public, with the public, in public. So it's very much aimed at the public coming along and discussing ideas and trying to jettison the personal baggage that comes with those ideas at the door and leave that behind and come and grapple with the important issues of the day.
Do you think that's what sets the Academy Ideas apart from like a university campus or like a library or something, is the fact that you're able to foster these discussions and conversations without necessarily having conflict? Is that what you think is different about it?
Emma, who's been at university much more recently than me.
I think it is different. And what you say about, you just mentioned conflict, I think it's not that there isn't, like Alistair said, there isn't disagreement. Obviously, it's not aggressive in the same way, but there is like conflicting ideas and you are challenged the whole weekend. And I think from, like Alistair said, my experience when I went to university, like the last 3 years, I always went to the Battle of Ideas. I always volunteered at the Battle of Ideas because it was a way that you can really see a bigger picture and you can see a bigger idea of what, as a society, you're working towards and what issues you're trying to actually get to the bottom of. Whereas at university, I think you're kind of gently exposed to ideas and trying to answer questions, but you're not challenged in the same way. You're kind of more following the line of you're still being taught and almost being told what to say in a lot of cases. And I think this is where you're really coming out, and you might end up at the same conclusion, but at least, well, that's very rare, but at least you've actually tested the limit of why you're believing in that. And so that's why I think it is very different to university and campus kind of debates and discussions.
My experience at universities when I go there these days, because I run a project called Living Freedom, which is aimed at 18 to 30-year-olds, and we try to encourage young people to do a little bit of engaging with the history and philosophy of freedom and free speech, and also we put on lots of discussions and debates around some of these contemporary issues, whether it be cancel culture or whether the burqa should be banned or whether whatever it is. So we go into universities quite a lot. And my impression from speaking to people in universities these days is that, very sadly, they're treated not so differently as they were in school. So that whole idea that very much existed in my day of you reach maturity and adulthood at the age of 18 and you go into university then as an adult, capable of dealing with all the complexities and difficult ideas that the adult world will throw up and throw at you. And, these days you think of universities and you think, well, they're shielding people from microaggressions and they're spending endless amounts of time on well-being and they're issuing trigger warnings to stop you reading a particular passage of a book which they think is going to upset you and all these sorts of things. So that wide experience of university, as it was in my day, I mean, it wasn't perfect, but I think compared to today, it was a lot more expansive, seems to have been narrowed at university. So the thing that I think differentiates us is that actually we do treat people as adults, and we do treat people as incapable of engaging with difficult ideas, and we do trust them to be able to listen and then to respond to them. And that's very much what the festival's like. That's why I think it's a little bit different from university.
The aspects of trust is very important. So it's brilliant that you invite people in this way. But my question now is about the sort of people that do come, because I think a lot of people, when they hear freedom of speech, they think far right. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that is the rhetoric at the moment. So do you get a mix, or is it usually more one way than the other? What's the demographic like?
Well, we very much set out to get a mix of people because we think that that's the way to have the best discussion. The demographic at the festival will range from, we have school outings, basically, where schools bring some of their sixth form along, usually a few hundred or a couple of hundred people from school might come along. There's university students, there's young professionals, there's older professionals, there's people who are retired. So it kind of spans right across the way, right across there in that sense. In political sense, I also think it probably spans the range of political opinions and political affiliations. Many people don't have political affiliations in the way that they might have done 30 years ago or 20 years ago, even when we set up the festival. But I think there'll be liberals there, there'll be conservatives there, there'll be populists there, there'll be left-wingers there, both in the audience and on the stage. So I think it's a fairly healthy mix. And I think that's what brings the discussions alive.
What role do you think that public festivals like the Academy of Ideas play in shaping this democratic culture that Britain has?
I think that it's really important that people understand that are contributing to the society and the culture that they live in. And even if it's not directly like through influencing policy or campaigning, because like as Alistair says, not everyone is party political or particularly issue political, like not all of the time. But I think this idea that just because you don't have one specific point or affiliation means you can't influence anything, I think that's quite damaging, when in society you really need to be invested in where you live and what you're working towards collectively. And so I think the benefit of having these kind of public festivals for debate and discussion is you're maybe not immediately working towards one thing, but you're helping people to understand what they value and what they want to see from social change, and kind of creating a really positive atmosphere that actually it is possible to have these discussions, it is possible to find out and discover these ideas, and then from there it is possible to do something about it. And I think without that, people become almost debilitated by their own thoughts and their own like overthinking, their own lack of kind of just general conversation and experience with other people about how they view their society and what they also want.
I mean, it's quite complicated these days, isn't it? Because when I think back to even probably when we started the festival 20 years ago, and you might have had if you're having, for example, a discussion about the future of the economy, which is obviously very important discussion just now as we hover along with no growth and no one seemingly having very many ideas about how to reinvigorate economic growth. And once upon a time, you might have had a discussion that was probably someone saying, oh, we should go in a more free market direction, versus someone who's saying, no, we need more a kind of state direction. But what they'd be arguing over in reality was what was the best way to grow an economy. These days, though, we've been through 20, 30 years where environmentalism has had quite a strong hold on the public imagination. Environmentalism is a creed that often says that growth is a bad thing because it leads to climate change. It means that people use more energy, that they're more mobile or whatever. So in a way, these days, the political conversation is whether to have growth or not, which is a very different conversation from what you would have had 20 or 30 years ago. So we do our best at the festival to capture the modern world in the way that these discussions and debates come up. So we're having discussions this year on things like, do we need to drill, baby, drill? Is Trump got a good idea there in terms of saying fossil fuels remain very, very important for the world, and we need to extract those types of fuels to use and return the economy to growth? Or are the environmentalists right, where they say climate change is so important and we end up facing such a dire future if we do, then we should leave them in the ground? And these are big, important discussions, modern discussions that you wouldn't necessarily have had when the festival started. So that's the type of thing that we want to encourage people to come along and be prepared to grapple with and work out.
But when people do grapple with these issues, should there be any topics that should be off the table, like religion, for example, or should everything be susceptible to like rigorous debate?
Well, I think we try and go with everything should be really
Sure.
up for debate, and we do have sessions on everything, especially for religion. Like Alistair said, we have a debate on burqa bans, and we have a debate on religious fervour and the rise of Christianity, because they are issues that affect the people who are living in the society as well as the people in the religions themselves. And I think that if you can't really have a conversation, if you can't grapple with it, then that's when people almost get more defensive or get less understanding. So by having that conversation, actually it gives both sides a great opportunity to understand each other. And that, I think, is much better for social cohesion than just leaving them to their own kind of circles.
Yeah, for my money, the religious discussion that Emma just mentioned about, it's called the religious fervor, the rise of faith or cultural Christianity. That to me is actually one of the most interesting and important issues of the current moment. I mean,
Yeah, same.
who would have thought, even a year ago, actually, who would have thought you'd pick up a paper and there'd be a survey showing the level of growth of attachment to religion amongst people under 25? I mean, it's quite astonishing cultural shift in a very, very short period of time. I think, though, what we like to do at the festival is to ask, well, what's behind that? And actually, what does it mean? I mean, is it actually a revival of religion in the sense that it once might have been? Or is it what Kemi Badenoch referred to as a more cultural form of Christianity? And if it is, what the hell is cultural Christianity? And what issues does that pose? Because that seems to me to be something that's a little bit different from traditional, possibly poses lots of different challenges. Lots of people seem to express an attachment to religion just now, perhaps as a way of trying to express something else, maybe. I mean, it's interesting. We've looked at if you look at some of the big marches that have taken place in London over the last few months, then there's a kind of surprising religiosity about some aspects of the crowds that have been gathering in London. Is that straightforward expression of religion? Is it a mechanism to express concerns about something else? You know, I think these are quite difficult things to untangle and to try and get behind a little bit. So that's the sort of thing that we're going to try and do with that session, to try and understand it a little bit more. It's certainly a world away from. I mean, even 10 years ago, we were the new atheist movement was on the run.
It's so
very,
interesting.
very popular. Yeah, and that's completely and utterly disappeared now. So absolutely incredible transformation. But what does it actually mean? I mean, that's the discussion.
Yeah, I'd love to go see that if it's there. That'd be the first thing I'd go see.
Last session on
Is it?
the 19th,
No.
the 18th of October.
Why has it got to be the last one? Oh, I want that first. Really understand the philosophy behind the Battle of Ideas now, and what you can all expect. So I really recommend that you go, because we will actually be going as media. I guess it's the first time we're announcing it. But we will be there, so make sure you go. It's an incredible festival, and we're both really excited for it.
Yeah, and we will be offering
We've got some free tickets for you as well.
4 free tickets, yeah.
Which you'll have to work out how you want to give away, but we're giving 4 free tickets to you guys to dispose of.
That's very kind of you. Thank you so much. So if you guys just DM us or comment, let's say your favorite episode of the Conversation Cabinet, and we'll get in touch and we'll arrange that you guys have some free tickets so you can come see us there and all the amazing speakers. It's going to be a really, really good weekend. So make sure you tag along. But thank you both for joining us today.
18th and 19th of October in London.
Is in Westminster, I believe.
Westminster, Church House in Westminster. You'll be joining with about 3,500 other people across the course of the weekend. 110 different panel discussions that you'll be able to come to. Not all of them, I hasten to add. You'll have to choose from about 10 or 11, 12 things even at any one time. But the good news is that the things that you miss, you can catch up on the Battle of Ideas YouTube channel in the aftermath of the festival. So all is not lost if you don't quite manage to see everything that you do want to see on the day. Very, very pleased to welcome your listeners, I think, to come along to the festival. Looking forward to seeing you guys. We are actually running an entire strand of live podcasts right the way through Saturday and Sunday. So there'll be about 10 podcasts across the course of the festival, and who knows, maybe it's you guys come in.
Maybe.
And you are
we'll be the top podcast.
One of our live.
We'll be the number one podcast there. Don't you worry.
We can all dream. We can all dream.
That'll be fantastic. And thank you so much for joining us. It's been really interesting.
Yeah, thank you very much for coming on. It was a great talk.
Yeah, and we look forward to it. So everyone put it in your diaries. And thank you all for listening. Goodbye.
We'll see you in the next one.
Right. Battle of Ideas, www.battleofideas.org.uk is where you find out information.